Okay, there we go. We are live on YouTube. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is a session of one of our new programs called Aging in Place Education by NAIPC members. And this is all featuring our members that are sharing their knowledge and wisdom. So today we have Ryan, who is a friend of mine, my podcast co-host, and also chair of the Massachusetts chapter. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about COVID and the future of senior housing, senior living. So thank you, Ryan, for joining us today. I'll turn it over to you. If anyone has questions that's watching on YouTube, because I know we're broadcasting it live on there, you can send us a note to Tara@taraballman.com, and I will be sure to pass along any questions to Ryan. Or if you're watching a repeat of this and have questions for anyone, you can still use that email address and we will make sure your question gets answered. So thanks, Ryan. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Tara. I will share my screen and just making sure you can see my screen, and I will present, do the presentation. So can you see that fine, Tara? Perfect. So this is a representation of what I believe the world is about. It is about a pendulum swinging back and forth. And when something goes too far in one direction, it inevitably needs to even out and reverse course and swings back in the other direction. And this topic is a lot about what's going on and what I'm seeing in senior care. And at the end, you'll realize that my main concern and my main focus is on nursing facilities, but we are going to talk about home care, home services, and of course, assisted living. So the pendulum swings back, swings back and forth. And we've seen this happen time and time again. I am in the Boston area, so you will have to forgive me for one of my examples. But first we have this guy. I don't know if you recognize him. He was very rich. He was very successful, unfortunately stealing people's money. Bernie Madoff made a career, and the pendulum was swinging in one direction pretty hard, but the pendulum swings back and corrects itself over time. And I'm sure he passed away recently, but I'm sure he was wishing he hadn't done all those horrible things to people when he was sitting in prison. A more friendlier example is this guy right here, my boy, Tom Brady. You know, the pendulum was swinging with the Patriots, right? We won all those Super Bowls. Things were going great. We had a great coach. We have a great coach. We had a great quarterback, and pendulum swinging a little bit in a different direction these days. So a lot of people up in New England are wondering, is that pendulum swung back and we're going to be, 20 years of a barren desert of bad football? We'll see. But again, the pendulum goes back and forth. So before I get into the presentation, a little bit about me. My name is Ryan McAniff, as Tara had mentioned. Tara and I do the podcast for the NAIPC called Conversations with Tara and Ryan. You should listen to that. But I also run a home care company. This year is actually my 10th anniversary running and owning Minute Women, which is pretty incredible. I didn't run it into the ground, so I'm pretty happy about that. I didn't pull the Suez Canal. I didn't run the ship into the ground and block everything and cause issues. But what we do with home care, if you're not familiar, and I won't spend much time on it, is that we work with urgent needs. We do 24-hour care. People that are coming out of a hospital that are going home that can't live at home on their own for whether it's a few weeks or a few months, we provide those aids. Minute Women is located in Lexington, Massachusetts, which is known for the Revolutionary War, and we've been in business for 50 years. So the name Minute Women, everybody kind of wonders. Not too many people ask, but I know everybody wonders, what does a big burly guy have Minute Women as the name of their company? So Minute Man was what is known for this area, and my aunt started this company and said instead of calling Minute Man, she'd call it Minute Women because it was a woman-owned company, and I came along and her big burly nephew bought the company from her 10 years ago. So I decided after 50 years in business, I had to keep the name. So that's a little bit about my background, but what I talk about and let people know about is what we do at the end of the day is we provide dignity to people. This is my mom, this is my dad, and myself in Colorado, taking a picture. And the reason I got into home care was because of my mom. My mom passed away actually 10 years ago this upcoming August. And she passed away and she got cancer. And basically what had happened, they had moved down to Florida and I had moved out to Colorado to drink lots of beer and go snowboarding and have fun. And you got the call, and you got a call that my mom had a seizure, and then you get the next call that she had the MRI and the cancer's everywhere. And so I quit my job. I moved to Florida to be by her side. We're a small family. I'm an only child. And, I knew my dad needed support going through this. And certainly, if I was terminally ill, my parents would have dropped everything to be by my side. So I was certainly going to do that as well. And I was in a position where I was still young. I was in my 20s. I didn't have a wife and kids, and I was in a position to be able to do that. Not everybody is in that position. But one of the things I will always remember is that my mom had cancer, and it was more about where it was easier to say where it wasn't than where it was. And that might be a blessing in disguise, that you don't know until near the end that you have cancer, rather than knowing for a year or 2 years. I guess you can look at that through different lenses if you like, but I look at it as a good thing that we didn't know. But one of the things my mom always said was, it's obviously terrible that I'm going to die from cancer, but that this is going to catch up to you. She was a heavy smoker, and she knew that her number was likely going to be called one day. She was realistic about that, was hoping it wasn't going to be as early as 64. But it is what it is. But what she told me was, as horrible as it is to die of cancer, the cancer takes away your dignity. And I've always remembered that when we're caring for people, that, when somebody's bedridden, when somebody's in constant pain, that 1% or 2% of dignity that our aides that can give back, and the people that are watching this on YouTube or live or recorded, we're all in the same business of trying to provide dignity to people when people are in their toughest times. And when you can give somebody even 1, 2, or 3% of their dignity back, or ideally more, that's a big deal to them. And I've always remembered that when I was running Minute Women, and still run Minute Women, that's a big thing for the people that we care for. Being able to even just comb your hair on your own, that provides some level of dignity that somebody wants. When you can't do that on your own, you feel it that much more than we think about it right now. So a lot of those things that we help people out with, we take them for granted. And I always will remember my mom saying the dignity, with the cancer taking the dignity, was the big thing that really just, was a kick to the gut for her. So what I bring that up is just kind of letting you know how I got into this business and what I believe in. And, what I want to talk about today is kind of how COVID is going to change senior care. I preference this saying that I'm in home care. So you could sit here and say Ryan is completely biased because he thinks that home care services are going to explode. And I mean, in a good way, they're going to gain traction. More and more people are going to want home care services. And you could be right. I mean, this is just what I think. I'm one person. This is my opinion, and I could be right. I could be wrong. But anyways, what I'm going to talk about is home care services. And what I mean by that is anything that that helps people in their homes. It doesn't need to be private home care, but it could be, chefs coming in and making meals and things like that. Anything that helps provide services to people, let them stay in their home. We obviously have the rehabilitation side, and I'm going to go quickly through this because I know most people know about this. But when I do this presentation, not everybody is in the know with how the healthcare system works. We have the short-term side and we have the long-term side. Long-term is generally for people with dementia. Short-term is people coming from the hospital and eventually going to be going home within a month. You have the senior living communities. In our area, we have a lot of independents, CCRCs, as well as assisted livings. And then we have certified home services, which are more of the Medicare services that help with medical home care. Up here, it's called VNA as well, Visiting Nurse Association, and then hospice and end of life services. So how is COVID going to change these things? Well, you know, one of the things that I've experienced is, have you ever bought a nice car and it was the car that you really wanted? I wish I had this car. I don't. But let's say you did have this car, and you say, hey, listen, I can't wait to buy this amazing fast sports car from BMW. And then you get in the car and you notice almost immediately every other person that's driving the same car on the road. Has that ever happened? It happens to me with every car that I've ever purchased. Like, you immediately notice everybody that has the same car. And so this right here is what I feel like. This is my neck of the woods in the Lexington, Burlington, Massachusetts area. We're about 8 miles outside of Boston. And this is all the assisted livings that are in the area. And so it's a lot when you look at it. And I guess what I'm saying with the BMW is that every time I drive by, I feel like I see another assisted living coming up. And it reminds me of something, again, this is very New England, but they're becoming popular nationwide. It reminds me of all the Dunkin' Donuts we have in this city. You know, you feel like you drive somewhere and there's a Dunkin' Donuts on each side of the intersection. And the reason I bring this up is that I think a lot of people drive by assisted livings and they don't realize what an assisted living is. They don't recognize what it is and who it's for. And so, you know, out of sight, out of mind kind of situation. But in my shoes, I'm always keeping my eye open for new assisted livings or nursing homes or whatever it might be, senior care related industries, just because I'm in that world. I notice every single person that's driving the car that I'm driving, just as I notice every single new community or facility that's being built, because I'm in that world. And you know, I've noticed that quite a bit in the senior housing communities. I think there will be a little contraction. I don't think it will be an outrageous amount, but I think that they've overbuilt. They're building them like Dunkin' Donuts. They're constantly having newer and improved buildings. And part of the problem is that a lot of these assisted livings are in leases. They don't own the actual buildings that they're in. So if they've had contraction, some of them might not be able to leave some of their properties because they're in triple net leases. And with COVID, there have been dropping occupancy rates. They've had major issues with COVID. And I would say that the dementia unit saved many of them, because dementia continued to progress and families felt like they didn't have much of an option. They had to come up with a solution for their loved ones. So those memory care units really helped out. But assisted livings, at least in this neck of the woods, got a lot of bad public relations. And I'm not saying that assisted livings are to blame for this. I mean, they were in between a rock and a hard place. What do you do when your community is based off of a social model where you purposely build small units, small apartment units, so people come out of them and then go into the community and interact? Well, once that social model goes away, basically people are stuck in a 300 square foot apartment. I have a relative that felt like she was in that, kind of locked in her room, and she was allowed to leave once a week or twice a week to throw out the garbage. She had a set time that she could go throw out the garbage, which was mind blowing. We got a lot of business from people that refused to send their parents into an assisted living because they did not want to have them be in a room by themselves for extended periods of time. And they'd rather take the risk of having our aides come in, which there was a risk to that, right? Having anybody come into the bubble is a risk. And they at least could see their loved ones whenever they wanted. So my guess is that there's going to be some contraction. They've obviously had losses in the revenue. That's openly reported, but I would imagine that underperforming communities will probably be consolidated into the communities that are better performing. Maybe the older buildings will be the leases won't be renewed, and they'll again consolidate that into more updated buildings or newer buildings that are going to be more profitable for them. But I think there is going to be a little bit of senior housing community contraction, and a lot of this, depends on, how long of a tail this cat has, how bad the hangover is from COVID. It was funny, Tara and I were talking before we recorded this, that I just got on my phone that Massachusetts is getting rid of all their mask regulations, all regulations regarding COVID, on May 29th, right before Memorial Day weekend. And so What's that going to do? I don't know. But, one of the areas that you have to wear your mask in still is going to be healthcare communities, hospitals, and I imagine nursing homes. And I imagine that's going to flow down to assisted livings as well. And that mask is a reminder of the danger that's out there with COVID. So what is that going to have for assisted livings and nursing homes? Is it going to be in people's minds for a long period of time, or are they going to jump and rush right into moving their loved ones into an assisted living once they've been vaccinated? I don't know, but I think that there will be a bit of a hangover from this. As far as home care services and the certified, I kind of lump them together. I think home care services of any kind are going to continue to expand. They were already on the rise already, but they've gotten even more popular. That we've been extraordinarily busy through COVID. All of the private agencies, anybody that's providing any services in the home for seniors that I have talked to has said that they've been busy over the last 16 months. They're expanding services into the home. I know now in Boston area, we have a very prominent company that's doing physician visits in the home. So they'll have the doctor come out and do the annual checkup for you. Telemedicine is booming. We know that that was kind of popular, but COVID, was basically put that on steroids and really got it more into the mainstream, that people had to learn about telemedicine if they wanted to communicate with their doctor. The other thing with home care is there's a low barrier to entry. That's a good and a bad thing, right? So anybody can get into providing home services depending on the regulations in your state, but there's a low barrier to entry. So are you going to look at a nursing home or an assisted living where you have to buy or rent a very expensive building, and then you have to staff that building, then you have to get salespeople to fill that building? Or do you have the low costs where you need to make brochures and a website, and then you can start hiring people and hopefully getting billable hours pretty quickly? So I think that's why home care is going to continue to grow. And at the end of the day, we are no longer a manufacturing economy. We're a US economy that is service-based. There's a reason why Grubhub and Uber Eats and all of these businesses over the last 5 to 10 years that have just exploded are providing services to people and saving people time. And at the end of the day, people want to age in their home. It's a well-known fact that people would rather be in their home. They want to pass away in their home rather than passing away in a nursing home. And so that's always going to be for the most part, not everybody, but for the most part, people are going to want to age in place, which is part of why we're part of the NAIPC, right? The National Aging in Place Council. So certainly I think that this is going to be something that continues to expand and continue to grow. And I think the proof's a little bit in the pudding. I mean, there's a couple things politically wise in here that I bring up that aren't meant to be political, but just to prove my point. And Biden's infrastructure plan earmarks $400 billion in home-based care for aging Americans. Now, a lot of that's going to be Meals on Wheels and for the lower income of seniors, but it's to me, proof is in the pudding that they are looking at making it more accessible to be in the home. Right now in Massachusetts, they're debating whether passing a law, whether they're going to offer a certain amount of money for home modifications, because they look at it as it's cheaper to do home modifications than somebody to break their hip or injure themselves, go to the hospital, go into a rehab, and then they become a frequent flyer because their baseline has changed and they're going to be a fall risk, and then they're going to be in there every other week. Well, wouldn't it be cheaper to just spend $2,000 to modify their home, and then you don't have to spend $20,000 every month or $40,000, $50,000 every month on them coming to a hospital and the nursing home? That's kind of the direction that I think we're going in. But the other thing that's going on is that, as many of you know, and I'll briefly go over it, is that the hospital was sending people to the skilled nursing facilities. Now they're sending people directly home, right? It used to be going to the skilled nursing facility, spending your 30 days there or so, using part or all of your benefit, and then you would go home with VNA services. Well, now the hospital's sending them right home, and the rehabilitation and the SNFs are going to be having problems with that. That is, I think I may have accidentally missed something, but anyways, the problem with these SNFs, I think I missed I had one for SNFs that was like this, but I guess it got kicked out somehow. But anyways, that's kind of what's going on with SNFs, is that they're going to be having these problems with the reimbursement. SNFs are, they're having issues. SNFs have lost millions and millions of dollars from COVID. I know that they're going to be having major, I'm trying to look for that. Oh, here it is. So it's a little bit ahead of it. I don't know why it was like that, but it doesn't matter. Basically, they have poor reimbursements. They're having these issues where they're not getting reimbursed enough for the people that are in their nursing home. And so the people that are staying in the nursing home, now that a lot of hospitals are discharging directly to home, are people that are on Medicaid. They're on, or in my world, they're on Mass Health, and they're not being reimbursed enough to keep the nursing homes open. Since those hospitals are discharging from home, that's costing them a lot of money. And in 2020 to 2021, I have the information somewhere if anybody wants a source, but they're expecting there to be $34 billion in losses for nursing homes, and they're expecting 1,800 closures or mergers. And so, you know, in the Boston area, when a nursing home closes, if you're inside of the 495 belt, if you will, you know, that's an inconvenience. But if you're outside of that 495, or you're in a part of the country where your nursing home services a large geographical swath of an area, you might have just been able to go see your parents once a day, or maybe a few times a week, to maybe seeing them once a week, or maybe a few times a month, because you don't have the ability, they're not close by anymore, and you can't see them very easily. You can't drive on the way home. You can't just stop in. It's a true trip to go somewhere. We had this experience in Massachusetts a couple of years ago before COVID hit, where, you know, in the south part of Massachusetts, there were like 4 or 5 nursing homes that closed abruptly. They just ran out of money, and it caused panic and chaos because that wasn't a rich area of Massachusetts. And so a lot of these people were like, well, where is my mom or dad going to go? And they found out they were going, you know, 30, 40 miles in a different direction, and they weren't going to be able to see their loved ones very often. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on rehabs and SNFs. And, you know, this presentation more than anything is about rehabs and SNFs and what's going to happen with the amount of closures that are occurring. SNFs had bad PR beforehand, right? Nobody wanted to go to a nursing home for any reason whatsoever. They wanted to be home. But post-COVID, they've had terrible PR. Some of that's rightfully due, some of that's not. In Massachusetts, our governor decided to prioritize hospitals, and he didn't prioritize nursing homes. And because of that, or partly because of that, you know, we had 50% of our losses of COVID came from nursing homes. We all know the disaster that happened in New York, where they were bringing COVID patients back into the nursing homes. And it's its own scandal, and we don't have to go into that. But the decision was made to use the nursing homes in a manner that obviously they shouldn't have been used, and the precautions weren't taken. So now when seniors are afraid of being left in a nursing home, now they're deathly afraid of being left in a nursing home, because all they've seen for the last year and a half is, if you go to a nursing home, you might die. And that's not a good reputation to have, because we need nursing homes. They're an integral part of the system, of our system that we have with long-term care and with senior care. Because while we're all advocates here for aging in place, which does encompass SNFs, I understand that is part of the National Aging in Place Council. The majority of people are going to want to age in place at home or in their assisted living, which is their home as well. They want to be in one of those two places. And so, that is going to be ultimately an issue that happens, because eventually there's a certain percentage of that population that's going to have dementia, that's going to have medically complex issues that are going to be too difficult to handle at home or in an assisted living. And then the question is going to be, well, where's the nursing home that we can put mom or dad into? And it might be pretty far away. And so, One of the things that I feel like I'm seeing right now is I'm kind of seeing this movie already. I say that sometimes. I feel like Lady Gaga is the new Madonna, right? Like we always have we literally watch the same movies over and over again because they just remake the ones that were popular in the 60s. Same with Lady Gaga, or they made A Star Is Born, which was a really good movie. But I feel like I've seen this movie before. We've heard about what happens when you close down psychiatric hospitals that lead to these mental health crises. And so we shut down all these psych wards and these mental hospitals. And what do we have with that? I mean, this is what we're seeing in major cities. And don't get me wrong, there are certainly people that are down on their luck and find themselves in this situation. But predominantly, a lot of these people have mental health issues or drug habits or both. And we've abandoned them by closing down a lot of those hospitals where they could have gotten help. And so the concern that I have is that if we continue to close down nursing homes, we're going to have our own issue with this. And again, this isn't anti-police. This isn't political at all. But we're looking at 1,800 closures and mergers due to COVID. And so one of the things that popped up in my newsfeed a couple of weeks ago was this. And I don't know if you heard about it, but it was Colorado officers violently arrest a 73-year-old with dementia, and I believe they broke her arm. And they thought she was just they just thought that she was a thief. I don't think they realized that she had dementia. And this isn't to be anti-police, it's not, but it's if they've already got a lot on their plate and they're already dealing with a lot of really bad people or good people that are having a really, really bad day. And now we're going to throw in that mix people with dementia because we're closing down nursing homes, and where are those people going to go? And I'm worried that that's going to be a repeat of what we've seen with the psych wards in the hospitals. And again, that kind of brings us back to this moment. The pendulum swinging. And are we swinging in the wrong direction? And what happens when it swings back? That's my big concern with nursing homes and with people with dementia, is that we're going to regret allowing a lot of these nursing homes to close because there are a lot of people that are counting on them. So that is my presentation. I appreciate you listening to me. I will stop my screen share and I can take any questions that you like.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. That was great. Really interesting. I did not get any emails come through from the people watching us on YouTube. I see that Deanne joined us here live. Hi, Deanne. I don't know if you're able to talk or not, but just talking about some of the home repair, using money for home repairs, that's something that Deanne and I have talked a lot about. She goes into these homes for one thing and then she finds another, and then it's just like, this avalanche of things that happen, that if we had just addressed something initially with one little thing, we could have saved money and time and tears and everything else. So yeah, it's a whole different way to look at things.
And it's very difficult, right? Because it's impossible, using my services as an example. It's very difficult to quantify how many falls we prevented. You can't really do that. So it's difficult to quantify how many falls and home modifications have stopped. But you can do a kind of a post-mortem on the incident or the situation, and then say, hell yeah, we could have done this, that, and the other. So it can be hard for families to see that, and that's part of our job, is letting them know and educating them on what could happen and what's the best practice for their loved ones.
That is true. Well, thank you, Ryan, for everything. I think that's all the comments, questions we had for today. So thank you for everyone that joined us. We'll keep this presentation up on the NAIPC YouTube channel, this and all the other programs by our members, and hope to see you all at a future event. So thanks, everyone.